now.
Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to talk of China's demographic bomb which is bursting. And why am I talking of this now? That's the first question I must answer before I wax eloquent. It is because for the first time in China's history that someone has really admitted that they have a problem. And this came about when Xi Jinping recently, an article came out in South China Morning Post. I'll show it, where he said that there are problems. But then the way it's been put across, everything is typical Chinese. You have to derive the meaning, in that roundabout manner. But we'll do it. Now, the interesting part is that this has a historical connect. And when I went into it, I said, look, there is a psychological issue and there's a historical connect which I must put across to you. It is only then you'll understand what the hell is happening in China as far as their demography is concerned. So what we'll do is, today I'm going to give you the macro issue, how this problem came about, and where is it standing today, and what does it portend from a macro issue. And then I'll put out a couple of videos. I'll do it in small packets of 15-20 minute videos, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on how it is, on the various aspects of this demographic problem. This demographic problem is like a octopus, hydra-headed octopus. और सर भी 8 हैं और हाथ भी 8 हैं इसके. So I'll put them in some logic and put it out in some format which I'll give you a broad idea towards the end of this thing. But first, let's start the story, because this is a story which you need to understand how this has come about. And this is a catastrophe which is staring at China's face. It is a catastrophe which is staring at the face of the globe. But it is a catastrophe which no one is acknowledging, including China. And it's happening faster than anyone thought of. Okay, now let me first give the historical connect. When you read the history of China, it becomes very clear that every Chinese leader, right from Chiang Kai-shek of modern China, when I say Chinese leader of modern China, has sown the seeds of disaster for the next generation. And this is not my viewpoint. This is what's happened. This is their history. Chiang Kai-shek, after Sun Yat-sen established the republic and he died, Chiang Kai-shek took over. And he went hammer and tongs to industrialize China and make it into a modern country. He was completely his nationalist government, completely in sync with the American way of doing things, or the British way, the imperial way of doing things. But China at that point of time was a completely different society. Okay? Very poor, poverty-ridden. It was coming out of the turmoil of imperial China, which had just ended about 20 years back. And there was a huge disparity in China, and it led to the rise of communism. Chiang Kai-shek wanted to industrialize. He did industrialize. It's not as if they didn't industrialize. The South industrialized. and the North gave birth to communism. That was Mao's famous retreat and his long march to the North, Liaoning. Okay. And then communism rose, China collapsed economically and things like that. The turmoil of communism and Japanese occupation, etc., etc. Then Mao Zedong came. He established Communist China, 1949. And then what did he do? He did the Great Leap Forward and did the Cultural Revolution. And then, interestingly, Mao believed that more the population, the better for China. And he asked people to produce children. Unlimited population was his dream. In this entire process of Great Leap Forward, Cultural Revolution, and unlimited children, China went into famine, a huge man-made famine. And it destroyed China's agriculture and it destroyed China's industry also. That was the seed of disaster which it gave to the next generation. It led to poverty, huge poverty. Okay. Then comes Deng Xiaoping. Everyone says Deng Xiaoping, hide your time, bide your time and hide your strength type and reform, all that. But he's put this one-child policy into place. That generation benefited. I mean, this is another recurring phenomenon. Whatever the leader does, that generation benefits, or rather, that generation, the elites of that generation benefit. The next generation suffers. But this one child policy is not for the next generation, it is for the next generation, the next generation, and the next generation, because it is irreversible. And then now comes Xi Jinping. He sells his China dream and returned to Maoism. He's taking people back to Maoism. Maybe not the Cultural Revolution. Maybe not the Great Leap Forward the way Mao said it. But he's doing his own Great Leap Forward. And it will get analyzed by the next generation. Just have to watch it. It's a matter of time. Now, again, I'll go back to the old speech. We have to look at the history of China to understand this entire story. Deng Xiaoping's speech of 89, just before he opened up China for reforms. In fact, I wouldn't say just before, around the time he was opening up China for reforms. Just on the eve, this was 2 days before Tiananmen. In fact, this was during a debate as to how to handle Tiananmen. He said, 2 conditions are indispensable for our development goals: a stable environment at home and a peaceful environment abroad. What do you see today? Is that happening in China? The environment abroad is definitely not peaceful, and the environment at home is slowly getting unstable. See how prophetic. China can accomplish nothing without peace and unity in politics and a stable social order. It is that stable social order which is at risk, which I put today morning. Social unrest in China, it's increasing. And a large part of social order is about people. And that is what is missing. And this is all underpinned by the one-child policy, whose motto was later, longer, fewer. Later means marry later. Longer means the gap between children should be longer, and fewer means have lesser children, number of children. Incidentally, when this motto of later, longer, fewer came about, people wanted to have a two-child policy, and it was later that it was converted into a one-child policy. Very interesting, because the communist way of thinking and their thought that they should be first in everything, I mean, they have to be the best in everything. That's their mentality. That's the communist way of thinking. We are better than the rest. When they do that thing, we are better than the rest, we are faster than the rest, we are more intelligent than the rest, we know the best, they end up in disaster. This has always been so, and their leaders are the prime movers of this story. And I'm not saying anything of my own thinking. This is all historical. I'm just putting history in its place. Today, what is the Chinese mindset? GDP is everything. If I have GDP, I'll solve everything. Unfortunately, it's not. But then we'll talk of that another day. Why am I bringing this? This is a very interesting set of articles. This is an article of 2013 in South China Morning Post. In South China Morning Post in 2013, it came out. Soul searching needed to avoid repeats of Cultural Revolution crimes. So there were crimes committed in the Cultural Revolution, and it was bad. It started in 2013. Before that, you'll find nothing. Why is 2013 important? It coincides with Xi Jinping coming to power. So the moment he comes, he wants to wash away the Cultural Revolution marks and bring his own brand of communism and turn back to something like communism, at the same time veering away from Dengism. And then this is an article of this year, early this year. Cultural Revolution was a catastrophe and Mao was responsible. China's Communist Party upholds its landmark statement. They had said this then. I searched today. Wait, has anyone else said it, or it is only in this? So the Communist Party comes out with these statements in the past 10 years. Before that, in Deng Xiaoping's period and all, there's nothing of this nonsense. So what has Xi Jinping done? Xi Jinping has shifted the blame of the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward squarely onto Mao. Then he squarely shifted many problems which China is facing onto Deng Xiaoping. That happened in the 19th Party Congress. You have to see the 19th Party Congress proceedings to understand this. And now, this. Xi Jinping weighs pros and cons of China's shrinking population. He's done it very smartly. In this, he slowly put across that there is a problem, but this was done then, it was needed, all that, but he squarely pushed the back blame onto Deng Xiaoping. How does he done it? So this, about 15-20 days back, or maybe a month back, I really don't know, he writes an article on Quishi. Quishi is their internal Communist Party, media outlet. I don't know whether it's written or just like that, but it is there that important people write, and it has only limited circulation. So it comes in the Quishi about this whole story. We don't know what's there in that. But after some time, South China Morning Post comes out with this. This came last week and it got missed. How many of us in India knew about it? This is where I say, you don't read China well, you're in for a trouble. We will misread China and give too much to China. So when this came, I read through it because मेरे कान तो कड़े हो गए. What did it say? Now this is what Xi Jinping says. He says past birth control policies were correct and effective. Yes, it was needed and very effective. What did they do? They eased the pressure on resources and environment as always also forced economic development. So resources could be managed better because people were lesser and the environment had lesser to bear, and it ensured that economic development continues. But he says reduced labor force, weaker consumer demand, and investment momentum loss are the results. So he straight said, "Bhai, wo karna to theek tha, but this is the problem." So this is the problem which was done earlier. It has been given to me, so I'm now telling all of you. Because why has he felt the need to tell all this today? That is the crux. The crux is not that there's a problem. We know it. The crux is China is failing. And Xi Jinping is already putting it out to whitewash his failure to take China forward. He says we need to work to maximize benefits while avoiding harm. So the benefits of the opening up and reform he wants to maximize and avoid the harm of the one child policy population collapse. And he's also qualified in this. Pace of transformation is fast. ये हमें पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है. Actually, they don't know what is happening. Actually. And I'll prove it. In fact, why them? We also don't know what's happening. He says population decline has come earlier than expected. He's lied. Xi Jinping has lied in this. It has come earlier than expected. And I'll prove it why he's lying. Now he's justifying that भाई ये तो आ गया, हमें पता नहीं था, तो ये तो झेलना पड़ेगा, हम फेल हो जाएंगे. And he now equates whatever has happened in China to whatever is happening in Western countries. He says the general pattern of modernization development worldwide, we are also doing, we are also happening because we are modernizing, all this is happening. What he doesn't say is what it took France to happen, in terms of demographics in 125 years, and maybe Germany in 60 years, and maybe USA and Japan and all in 40, 50 years. China has happened in China in 20 years, 2 decades. Just 2 decades. And those countries became old before they became rich. China is becoming old. Sorry. Those countries became old after becoming rich. Whereas China has become old. It has already become old before becoming rich. In fact, I put it this way, China has becoming old while it is still poor. Because yesterday I told you that the per capita income of 70% of China, as per Chinese sources, official Chinese sources, is only $250 a month. Whereas ours is around 2,000 or 200. Very little difference. This is a very important thing which has come out. Let's go ahead and understand why is he lied. So, 2 things he has lied. Population decline has come not come faster than it was expected, and it does not follow the general pattern of modernization development worldwide. Yet everyone has accepted it. In fact, United Nations said it will happen in 2030, right? This population, but it has happened in 2025 or 23. Happened 7 years before it was supposed to happen. Why? Because United Nations went by the data given by the Chinese. As per that, this was to happen in 2030. Okay? And when was this predicted? It was predicted 10 years back. In fact, there is a report called China 2030. It was done by the World Bank and the some development council, State Development Council of China. Both of them signed on it. This finds mention very clearly in that China will have to face this demographic decline. All these factors. And this was presented to Xi Jinping when he took over. Now, for Xi Jinping to say it has appeared faster is absolutely a lie. And it's a whitewashing of what China is going to face in the future and put the blame on the previous generation. He's already done it. What's interesting about whatever is happening in China is that no other country has gone through this experience, including Japan and South Korea. In Japan and South Korea, if you see, they've always known that they're going to have this problem. And the time period on which this problem occurred to them was far more. And I will re-talk of Japanification of China one of these days and put this in that context. And historically, there is no model available for China to deal with this aging. It is aging at the fastest rate in human history. People say, "Yaar, ye Buddha general, what is this old fellow? No, he knows nothing." Yeah, maybe. But these are facts. These data and these timelines I have now picked up from South China Morning Post. Have a look at it fully. Because unless you see, you'll not understand. It was in 1980 where I've shown this, right? Let's show the pointer. It was in 1980 that this one-child policy was first instituted. This whole thinking came just after Mao died. And then Deng Xiaoping gave that famous thing of lesser, longer, and fewer, or whatever that, later, longer, and fewer. 76, Mao died. He gave, immediately Deng Xiaoping gave this motto, or rather this, his way of doing things. And by 1980, China introduces a one-child policy to control its rapidly growing population. Okay, then what happens? 1991, China's replacement rate drops below the level needed to maintain a stable population. In 11 years, because the one-child policy was so draconian that their birth rate fell below 2. So to say that no, we didn't know this was coming is complete lie. So China knew all the while what was happening. Okay. In fact, in 2012, demographers warned, as late as 2012, the Chinese demographers, to please their bosses. 2012 is just 12 years back. They said, look, if you allow people to have more than 2 children or any number of children, right, the fertility rate will go up more than 4.4 births per woman. This is from their sources. I mean, just think their replacement the replacement rate drops below 2.1 in 1991. In 2012, 20 years after that, 21 years after that, they say no. If you take out the two-child policy, the birth rate will go above 4.4. I mean, people say, why is this 2.1 sacrosanct? When people say 2.1 is the replacement rate, the thing is very simple. I mean, you have to understand it, right? What is the thing? A family has two people, mother and father. To replace this mother and father, they have to give birth to two people, a brother and a sister or whatever. So if two people are replaced by two, then the total population is stable, down the line. To cater for uneven things, people dying, sometimes the population going up, sometimes population going down, someone having a third baby, someone not having a second baby also. By research, people said 2.1. Every woman, if she gives birth to 2.1 people or births, then the population remains stable. This is interesting. If it is lesser, the population starts slowly declining. Okay. Now this is where I go back to this. Now, in 1991, the population started declining below 2.1 birth rate. 2012, the government demographers want that allowing all couples to have two children could push the fertility rate above 4.4 births per woman. Okay. In 2016, just 4 years after that, I mean, just see how they have changed. When they realized that this is not going to work, 2016, they ended the one-child policy. They said that was when they brought in the two-child policy. And this is still now 8 years back, 2016. They knew the problem from 1991. They knew that this is going to happen. And people had started telling them much before. In fact, at the turn of the century, there are analysis which say, don't do it, reverse it. They didn't. For 16 years, they didn't. Okay. When they did this in 2016, they said, I mean, this is their official projection. They said fertility rate will peak at 2.09 in 2018. Right? This one child policy. And they said, even if we understand if you institute the two child policy, things might not happen and all. But by 2023, that is last year, it will only decline by 1.75. It will decline only to 1.75. And this will continue like this, and it will go down to only 1.72 by 2050. कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है हमें. झूठ बोलते हैं, अपने आप को भी झूठ बोलते हैं. I mean, you see how interesting this is. Why they did it, one doesn't know. So how much they falsified documents, one doesn't know. And all these I am picking up from Chinese literature. It is astounding how they have lied to themselves and how they lied to the world. Okay? Okay. And then in 2021, they introduced now the three-child policy. Their official story is this in 2016. Two-child policy, it doesn't work. They suddenly start realizing, okay, there's a problem which is coming very fast. So they published that in 2021, 3 years back, they instituted three-child policy. So everyone will say, यार अगर two-child policy was instituted and three-child policy was instituted, where's the problem? सब ठीक हो जाएगा, कोई problem ही नहीं है. 2 years back, when I was talking of population, I still remember when DA to China, defense attaché to China, when I was discussing, oh, no, there's no problem only. They'll all replace people, they'll do everything. They're taking measures, everything will be okay. Everyone was brainwashed. After that, I stopped speaking to that fellow. I said, यार तुम तो brainwash होके आ गया वापस. असलियत नहीं देखा, असलियत आपने सूंगा भी नहीं. तो ये है कहानी. 21, they introduced the three-child policy. 22, the population decline is shown. First time population decline happens in 6 decades. Now it's downhill. ऊपर नहीं होगा. And the reality is that China will struggle to stabilize its fertility rate at 0.8, less than 1. If you do the multiplication factor, in 5 families, they'll have 4 children. Period. 5 families means 5 mother and father. 10 people, they're going to be replaced by 4 children. This is the Ganit. Okay? When those 10 people die, there will be 4 children. And these 4 children is only 2 couples will have half a child. In the 3rd generation, you will find geometrically they'll start falling. I'm not going to go into the details of birth rates, death rates. I'll put it out separately, how things are happening. But whenever you want to think of demography, think of these figures. This is from Statista, 2004. I picked it up. As per this, in 2028, okay, and their population, Chinese population, would still be at 1.4 billion. This is based on the data which China has given. They've happily published it. Now you don't believe it? Have a look at it. Everyone goes to Statista to get details. ये देखो नीचे है Statista 2024. This is a population of China in 2028. So they have fooled everyone, but ultimately they have fooled themselves. See this. When did the two-child policy come in? 2016, isn't it? Yeah, 2016. Now look at this. In 2020, couples were required to pay penalty for violating two-child policy. Still, so they declare a two-child policy, but on ground, people are still being forced to pay penalty. And where does this come from? Global Times. You see what's happening in China. So when we say this is happening in China and that is not happening in China, please understand how much they are lying to everyone and how much they are lying to themselves. So when you see data coming out of China and you blindly accept it, you will be like a fool. But if you sift the data, you will get to the reality. This is the reality. And this reality is not my reality, it is Chinese reality. Today, many who have been fined by the government, as per the previous birth control rule, they want a refund because their refund, this is a movement which is going on in China. They say, yeah, you took money, you had a policy, we had children as per that policy only, but you are now you took money from me, please give it back. A very logical thing, isn't it? You declare a two-child policy, I have a second child, and immediately people come and take money. Suddenly, Xi Jinping Sahab comes and says, no, no, produce more babies. So these people who didn't know went and found out, यार ये तो हो गया है, अब मेरा पैसा वापस लो, मेरे को तो तूने फाइन कर दिया. Okay. And then couples who had more children had to pay social maintenance fees to have their child legally registered in the household. And this was one of the penalties which was imposed on anyone who had more than one child. Social maintenance fees was taken, and if this social maintenance fee was not given, that second child didn't exist on paper. His name was not there, his father, he was non-existent. So they had to pay. No, all these are part of China, the way things have happened. Okay. In 2021, when the three-child policy is instituted, people are still being harassed. China's former one-child policy continues to haunt families. They have psychological problems. So this is the reality of this entire demography business, but it doesn't end here. Huh? There's more. And then finally, now they say scraps fines will let families have as many children, all this nonsense, which is now their propaganda. The reality is something far different. I'll just show you the reality. Look at this. This is the population by, I'll open this up and you can have a good look at it. This is the population by age groups. And this is a UN chart, not my chart, not Chinese chart. But this chart is based on UN data. So this blue line is of the working age population 25 to 64. This is the red line is of the births 0 to 14 children. This 15 to 24 is this green line. This is also dwindling because the decline started long back. And 65 plus is increasing. Okay. And on the horizontal line, you see this around 25, 2050. And so this 2050 is a reasonable figure. After that, we'll see what happens. Nothing much will happen, but it will go even worse than this. So what I did was I said, okay, I got this out last year, this data. I worked on this data. The red line is the 23 data. Okay, this maroon line is 23 data. The red line is the 2030 data. The green line is the 2040 data. And then the 2050 data. So I converted it back into figures. So have a look at this graph, right? Oh, I said, let's not see too far ahead. Just let's look at till, 2030. So till 2030, if you see the total number of people, it's about 1.41 billion as per the official things, and it goes down to only 1.405 billion. Million, sorry, not, 1.405 billion, 1405 million. This is fine, just about 5 billion, there's not great loss. But constitutionally, if you look here, this is the issue. In this decade, they would have lost 20 million working hands and gained 60 million old age people, while continuing to lose, babies and the thing. 15 to 24, a marginal increase. So this balances. But this is the issue. Yeah, this is not alarming till 2030. Though this figure of this this whole thing had to be actually happening in 2025. Or not even 2025. This should have happened in 2030. This is the 2030 mark. This is the green line. It should have happened here, but it is happening here. But even if it's happening, it's okay. 5 million down. Going ahead, we'll manage it. That is the thinking. But that's not the truth because this is based on Chinese figures. There's one guy called Yi Fuxian. He's a Chinese demographer who ran away from China, who was kicked out of China because he produced some figures, the truth, and he's now in USA. He's argued that China's population today is only 1.28 billion instead of 1.41 billion. So there's 130 million less. That's what he's argued. Now, to support his argument, what did he do? He took data from Baidu, their own data. And he said, look, from 2018 onwards, okay, all infant-related products started decreasing. What is that? Maternity clothes, strollers, cribs. Their sales started decreasing. Why will their sales decrease? If there are no babies, there are no sales. Isn't it? That's a very simple thing. But similar trends, that's why here you see these blue ones are the maternity clothes, green ones are for stroller, and cribs are the yellow ones. You see from 2017-18, it's steeply falling down. So the demographic decline started in 2018. But he says the same trend was not there for refrigerators, condiment, washing machines, ये वो तो बिक रहा है क्योंकि वो बड़ों के लिए है, बच्चों के लिए ये है, ये बिक नहीं रहा. This is not being this thing. And he says this data does not match the 2020 census. That's why he says, as per E. Fuxian, population began to decline in 2018. So this is not the only thing. He took 4 parameters. I'll explain only 2 parameters today. The second parameter, in fact, he says this is fine. Instead of, he argues China's population is 1.28 billion instead of 1.41 billion. Fine. Then what he did is he took an estimate of births based on BCG vaccine. Now it's very normal. I'll not go into the complication of this. He says, look, every child when he is born is given a BCG vaccine immediately within 24 hours of birth. So he has calculated the total number of vaccines which were expended by China. And he feels even this indicates that there's a decline. And he says if the number of people who are born were as per Chinese statistics, the amount of BCG they would have had to actually put would have been hell a lot more. It's not there. If you see here, the BCG dose after 2017 starts decreasing, the number of doses. Total number of doses expended in China. And this he's taken from Chinese data because he was there till then. When he produced his results, he was made to run out of, he was sent out of China. He's taken other data. Both these data, in fact, all 4 data, he took 4 parameters, proves that he's right somewhere. Now, what is the effect of this? This is the more important point. We'll get back to this. Look, by 2030, these chaps were to have 1,405 million or 1.4 billion people. We said it didn't matter much. If, as per this fellow, this population is only 1.28 billion in China, okay, then 1.28 billion approximate to what is to happen in 2050. So the question comes, are we seeing now And he says this has started, he published these figures last year. So is this correct or is this correct as per Fukan? Which means we are in this stage already, 2050 stage, as per his thing, maybe 48. Which means their working age population is only 660 million. Their worker rate is very fastly decreasing, already decreased. And that is why they want robots. They want unmanned. Why is China thrusting into high tech, unmanned robots and all? Because इनके दिमाग में, चाइनीज कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी के दिमाग में एक ही चीज है, टेक्नोलॉजी. टेक्नोलॉजी विल गिव जीडीपी. उसको एक्सपोर्ट करो, कुछ करो, ये करो, प्रोडक्शन करते रहो और इकोनॉमी ठीक हो जाएगा. They cannot consume. If number of people are reducing, how can they consume? If you see, China is now straight-jacketed. It cannot do anything but export. It cannot do anything but high tech and then export. They'll produce, but who will consume it? Within China, they cannot consume. That is the economic outflow. If Fukan is right, okay, he's wrong. Let's say he is wrong. Okay, Fukan is wrong. Even if he is wrong, and this is not 1.2 billion, say it is 1.35. Even if it is 1.35, you're already at night. What is to happen in 2040? It's already happened in China. I'll again show this before. It's already happened in China. And hereafter, the fall will only be steeper. So if someone thinks that China is going to recover from this catastrophe, then forget it. I am very sure a lot of Chinese will come and troll, because the number of Chinese who are trolling my podcast have gone up. Okay? So this is the reality of China. So their economy can't go up. They cannot go into consumption. They will not, because they can't. They'll only go into unmanned, high tech, tech, war tech. That's why that investment. And that is why they are looking at export. उनका एक्सपोर्ट बंद कर दो. चाइना का एक ट्रिक ही है हमारे पास. चाइना को सॉर्ट आउट करने के लिए एक ही ट्रिक है. उसका सामान मत उतारने देना अपने जमीन पे. If 10 countries do that, finished. Why do they want USA to open its exports? Because that's the most biggest consuming nation. If China doesn't consume, if USA does not consume Chinese exports, China is finished. I'm predicting it. You'll see what's happening. Upar, they have hyperinflated their GDP by building property, rail lines, infrastructure, which they don't need. They're not getting return of investment. It was very nice till they created that employment. People got money and all that. It's all in debt. They've invested into the military, hoping to coerce people so that they can trade. But that's not happening. That's why they're pivoted away from India. So if you actually analyze China, China is up the creek without a paddle. This is permanent. I keep showing this article, this picture. It is permanent. The demographic decline is not reversible. What are the effects? Births and population will continue to decline. Not reversible. Aging and societal burden will keep increasing. There's no choice. Marriages are decreasing, divorces are increasing, which means births will decrease. Births decrease, population decreases. They're now like a noodle, sub wound up. There's a reduction in workforce which will not reverse. So you'll find China going more into high tech. Robotization, all this nonsense will come. A lot of fake stuff will come out, but it will come. And there's going to be societal effects. I'm not going to go into all this because I'll put out a thing separately, the details, the nuts and bolts of demographic decline. I'll do it in give a little break so that you analyze it. Those of you who are interested can go into this in detail, right? These issues. Read, just think, maybe see this video once, twice, thrice. Let the data sink which I put across to you. Let my analysis sink into what you are thinking. And then I'll put the nuts and bolts of this whole framework. Right? I do hope all of you have liked this videos on China especially, and I hope you'll press the like button, right? And I hope you'll subscribe to Ganashot. Okay, I'll take a few questions, and